Hey everyone! So I wanted to get this alternate romance scene together for you all, since I got that video on Araj the Drow posted. Now, since this scene does share elements with the original video I put out on his Act 2 romance, I'm going to cover the parts that are different only. And there's actually a lot that's changed here, so believe me, there's enough to talk about. So if you saw the previous video in my Astarion Romance series, you'd know that there is a NPC in Moonrise Towers that will cause this romance scene to change into the one I'm about to show you. If you haven't seen the video, go check it out here. And if you're into Astarion, it's probably best to bookmark my Astarion Romance playlist so you can see all those videos in order as they were intended. I'll flash that on the screen for you right now. Okay, so as I mentioned previously, I didn't find this NPC until the end of Act 2 in my first game, so I got a completely different romance scene. But if you talk to Araj first, before the romance scene triggers, you'll get this scene instead. Let's take a look.
I want to thank you. For what you said. Whilst I was in front of that vile drow. I spent 200 years using my body to lure pretty things back from my master. What I wanted, how I felt about what I was doing, it never mattered. You could have asked me to do the same. To throw myself at her. What I wanted be damned. But you didn't. And I'm grateful. It's a novel concept, I admit. And, a little intimidating. It would have been so easy to bite her. To just go along with what I was being told to do. A moment of disgust to force myself through, and then I could have carried on just like before. The entire reason for my existence was to seduce anything with a pulse. And every instinct I have tells me that nothing's changed. I'm still just a means to an end. You made me see that I never stopped thinking like I was his slave. Even in freedom. But I'm more than that. More than a thing to be used.
Isn't this wild? I'm completely blown away at the degree of variability in these scenes. People have told me all sorts of differences in their own romance scenes too. Some have said they've been completely blown off by him where he just says he used them and bounces. And some said it was a similar scene but not as intense. It's going to be fun hunting down all of the possibilities over the next few months, or maybe even years. So getting back to the scene, it's interesting to see that he doesn't come to you and say he thinks you guys need to talk as he did in my original romance scene, but he comes right out and thanks you. Now, given I already know what's coming at this point, I'm very loath to pick any of the overtly sexual choices, even though if I didn't know any better, I'd probably want to pick one. So I just went with the safe answer for what? Let's keep it nice and simple, right? He's appreciative of the fact that you stood up for him during the confrontation with Araj, or at least, let him make his own choices. And he then explains that he spent 200 years using his body to lure people in for Cazador, telling you that how he felt about it, let alone anything, was never considered in the past. So not being forced to do something is a new, much-liked concept for him. And it's also interesting that he seems to relate his relationship with his old master to you, because he then directly compares you with Cazador, saying how you could have asked him to do the same, but you didn't. At this point, he doesn't even have to listen to you, but he's falling into old habits, as he mentioned in the other confession scene. But I think it's more that you didn't ask when you could have. Most of the responses here are pretty safe, I think, except for the last two options. I don't think picking, I was hoping that as a reward for my support, you'd throw yourself at me is going to be a positive choice. But I don't want you to do anything you don't want to isn't bad. But also I found I liked the "are you getting sentimental on me" response as well. But whatever considerate response you pick, he openly admits that he really has no idea how to do his own thing, that he likes the idea of it but finds it intimidating, which kind of sucks for him, but is completely understandable, especially since he's so used to just doing everything he was told for so long because he literally didn't have a choice. This next part is such an honest admission, too, that it would have been easy to bite her to just go along with it, but by now I think Astarion has been awakening, so to speak, awakening to the idea of actual freedom and not wanting to be a slave to his old habits. And what's nice about this scene is that he's becoming open with you about it now, too. It's weird how this talk seems, I don't know, less emotional than the scene I originally got. I mean, in the other one, he was so nervous and really told me a lot of deep personal stuff in a way that hit me pretty hard. Here, he seems to be a little bit more blasé about what happened initially, saying it almost as if in passing, that it would be a moment of disgust to force himself through, and then he'd carry on like before, whereas the original scene I got was so much more, I don't know, connecting. I felt like he was telling me more about how it actually affected him, and it was less of a, look, I'm being tough face. I don't know if this scene just isn't impactful to me specifically, or if it's because I didn't see it first. Either way, I honestly wasn't sure what to say next here, so I just went with that would have been wrong, because even before hearing his first confession, I wouldn't have wanted to make him drink some nasty chick's blood, but now we get to the one line here that did really hit me hard. It kind of breaks my heart a little when he says that he just felt like a means to an end. I don't know why that resonates so much with me. Maybe because I've had that thought myself before, and hopefully without risking getting too personal here, I think a lot of us can relate to being made to feel that way in a bad relationship, and it doesn't even have to be a romantic one. Sometimes it can just be your parents, or sometimes both a parent and an ex-lover if you're really unfortunate. But the reason it bothers me, I think, is because it always seems like it's okay to beat yourself up, right? To think poorly of ourselves because someone led us to feel that way, and they did it for so long that we just think it's normal to feel that way. But when someone comes in as a third party, even when you're the one coming in as that third party, it just feels so wrong because you know it's not true. Granted, Astarion isn't a real person, but he represents many people who are real. In the original third romance scene video I did, a lot of people shared some of their experiences with abuse and relationships in the comments, and it's pretty humbling to see how many people out there are going through very similar situations, and they knew exactly how he felt. It's kind of funny because I couldn't really relate to him until he said that line. And for all those people out there who think fawning over a pixel man is trivial and stupid, I'd argue that it helps to bring people together who would otherwise be alone. And I was just really surprised at how this line and topic touched me in a way that I was not expecting. And I think that's what's beautiful about connecting over these characters and games with other people. And that's what affects me about Astarion's words here. You can't help but realize that he doesn't deserve to feel that way. And with that realization, you can't help but feel that you don't deserve it either. Nobody should ever be made to feel like they're a means to an end by another person, and if you've been made to, you have to know that person is freaking wrong. I believe everyone has something to offer and everyone has value, and it's wonderful to see that Astarion is starting to understand this more when he tells you that you made him realize, he never stopped seeing himself as a slave. And God, when he says he's more than a thing to be used, I about died. Like, we're back on cue with that amazing expression that just cuts right through any emotional facade you might have. I absolutely love that Larian, Neil, the writers, and everyone else involved in bringing this game to fruition were able to make characters that make you feel so much for them. It's so easy to forget that you're playing a game sometimes. It's so immersive. And Neil especially does such an incredible job because that emotion is portrayed expertly here. I mean, you don't even question it. Okay, so this is about where the scene comes back to the original one I showed with slightly different options. For instance, I care about you deeply is not an option, but instead just I care about you. And the option to be evil Tav is not available either, which isn't necessarily a bad thing, but it is worth mentioning. but the rest of the scene plays out the same given you choose to keep the romance going. It's also wild that he doesn't mention using you at all in this scene versus the other one where he comes out and directly states that he had a plan to manipulate you. But there is one option where he does kind of get into that side of it. Let me show you that real quick.
Well, of course. I needed protection. People don't trust vampires, perhaps understandably, so I needed to get someone on my side. And seducing you was easy, frankly. So imagine how stupid I felt when I started to genuinely feel something for you. Trust me, I was not happy about it. You were a complication I didn't see coming. And yet...
Here, he comes off a little defensive almost, saying how he needed protection because he's a vampire, and it kind of rubs me the wrong way when he says seducing me was easy. Even if it was easy, it's not fun to have it shoved in your face. I know he's not trying to come off as offensive, but it still kind of hurts a bit the way it's delivered. It is cute when he finally talks about how he felt stupid for genuinely feeling something for you, though, saying he wasn't happy about it and how you were a complication. It's not meant in a mean-spirited way, but more, I think, the old version of himself conflicting with the new free person he's trying to become. But compared to the other scene where he says this...
And all I had to do was not fall for you. Which is where my nice, simple plan fell apart.
It just doesn't compare. So I'm going to say I think I like my original scene more, even though it was rough in terms of seeing him kind of break down everything that happened to him and how it makes him feel disgusted at the thought of honks. It feels more personal, you know, and I still loved hearing him say that I was incredible and deserved something real. It was just so sweet, and even though a lot of it hurt to hear, it ultimately made me feel closer to him. It just comes off as more fulfilling, in my own opinion. In this scene, you can very easily skip a lot of the core elements of what happened between the two of you. But isn't it cool that there's this completely different option floating around out there? It makes you wonder if there's more possibilities in terms of altering this scene, and I wonder how it affects your future romance with him, or if it does at all. This game has really amazed me with how detailed and varied it can be, and the cast is just incredible, doing an amazing job of delivering these characters who are quickly becoming so entrenched in my heart. There is one more scene I came across in Act 2 that I'm not sure what to make of, where Astarion basically talks to you about taking over the Absolute's cult. It might just be one possible path Astarion can take in your game, but it doesn't seem romance specific. Besides, however, it might affect his outcome. It's hard to look into it without finding spoilers, so I might just skip past it for now and continue on with the romance, and then come back to it later. Still, I'd love to hear from you guys if there's anything else I might have missed in Act 2 with the romance, but for now, I'm going to consider it finished and start working on Act 3 content. If I find anything more out about the whole cult thing, I'll come back and add it in later, once I beat the game. If you enjoyed the video, consider subscribing, as there is going to be a huge slew of new BG3 content coming out over the next few months, possibly years. I mean, there's a lot. Thanks to my Patreons for the support, and if you'd like to help support the channel too and get access to the private Discord and a whole other chunk of content on Patreon, then head over and make a pledge. I'll see you guys later.